In the Earth's most ancient and profound memories, the existence of some lives is, in itself, a poem about concession and reconciliation. She possessed an agile skeleton capable of striking fear into small herbivorous dinosaurs. That streamlined body, several meters long, was meant to be the most lethal gray lightning of the dense forest. Yet, unlike her irritable tyrannosaurid kin, who bore thick, broad skulls and were prone to crushing prey with brute force, her snout was extremely long and flat, her bones as slender as an ancient bronze longsword finely polished by time. Such a delicate-looking, even somewhat lonely semi-aquatic predator did not choose to die defending a glorious territory, nor did she perish in a desperate cry of starvation in her final hours. Tonight, let us accompany the flickering hearth fire and this story, which you need not strain to remember, as we step into her true life. Qianzhusaurus qianqian, a name that in cold fossil taxonomy represents a unique, long-snout tyrannosauroid that lived during the late Cretaceous. But in the real night of 70 million years ago, a time filled with crustal rifts and the struggle for hegemony, Qianqian lived as an introverted enigma, through a nearly eternal slow rhythm. This is not an encyclopedic record glorifying bloody conquest, but a quiet echo about how to lay down burdens under the weight of the era, and drift into peaceful sleep amidst the lingering warmth of damp wood and moonlight. On the edge of the East Asian continental plains during the late Cretaceous, the air was perpetually steeped in the somewhat sweet scent of earth, released by overgrown vegetation. The forest was lush, dozens of meters-tall redwoods and bald cypresses covered the sky, leaving only shreds of broken golden light to fall wearily upon the ground. Qianqian stood at the edge of this unpredictable coastal plain. Her body, covered in fine, dense scales, appeared exceptionally steady in the shadows of those ancient plants, like a gray statue moving slowly through time. The catalyst for the first turning point in her fate was an unpredicted megaflood. Weeks of rare mudslides ruthlessly swallowed the lush shrubs and clear shallows she had relied upon to survive. Extreme food scarcity plunged the once calm predator group into a state of brutal attrition overnight, as order collapsed in panic and hunger. To compete for the last few herbivorous dinosaurs not swept away by the flood, those giant-skulled tyrannosaurids began endless, frantic physical collisions in the center of the territory. The dull sounds of impact, mixed with the blunt pain of tearing flesh, echoed across the wilderness daily, leaving the entire sky feeling exceptionally oppressive. Qianqian watched it all quietly. She saw companions who once walked side by side torn apart in fratricide, their beautiful skin shattering into useless scraps under heavy blows, blood staining the muddy flats. As a Qianzhusaurus with a slender snout, she was naturally at a disadvantage in such pure brawls. The elder leader began to fix his violent, exclusionary gaze upon her, attempting to drive this different-looking member out of the territory entirely. At that moment, the wisdom deep within Qianqian, that of a long-snout hermit, fully awakened. It was not a battle impulse, but a deep exhaustion with endless plunder and a profound choice of self. She did not rise to meet the leader's roars of jealousy and intimidation, nor did she attempt to use her solid body to carve a bloody path to false power. Instead, on an evening when the heat wave slowly faded, she turned her body with extreme slowness. She stepped across the slippery reefs washed by the sea, moving as slowly as a leaf drifting through time. Without a single look back, she left that land of madness, walking step by step toward the desolate, silent, and unknown marsh. To leave the protection of the group meant Qianqian had to face, alone, the top predators wandering in the dark night that followed the law of rapid killing, as well as unknown terrors from the deep water. On the edge of this empty marsh without tree cover, a single second of negligence could lead to a devastating blow, but Qianqian stubbornly carried her slow rhythm into her very marrow. She walked very slowly. Due to the uniqueness of her long snout and the stretch of her body, every step required her slender hind limbs to pause in the air for seconds. Her broad feet landed on the moist red earth with a dull, lingering, and therapeutic rustling sound. That posture did not resemble an escape, but rather a way of using her body to touch and sense the heartbeat of the land. This slowness, instead, created a wondrous resonance with her surroundings. Throughout the long day, she had to endure the scorching sun and search the rugged coastline for the remnants of small fish and amphibians uncorrupted by volcanic ash. Every time she lowered her neck, her heavy skull would press down, causing her cervical vertebrae to ache. The long trek accumulated great soreness and fatigue in her muscle fibers. Because her long snout was pressed against the damp ground for long periods to probe for food, a thick chill began to seep in, leaving her gums feeling heavy and uncomfortable. Yet she did not stop, for she knew that in this cold wilderness, the only way to survive was to find an absolute sanctuary where both body and soul could be completely settled. Finally, at sunset, on the edge of a pond as calm as a mirror, she found a huge, damp log, thoroughly baked by the day's sun and covered in a thick layer of blue-green moss. This was a natural haven. The tall, primitive reeds blocked the biting sea wind, and the fallen tree trunk emitted a captivating, generous warmth. Qianqian slowly stopped at the edge of the damp wood. She closed her eyes slightly, feeling the warm air current spreading up from her lower legs, and the tension of the past few days finally tore open a gap of relaxation. In documentaries obsessed with portraying dinosaur wars, the delicate-looking Qianzusaurus is often mistakenly viewed as a marginalized species headed for decline due to evolutionary divergence, as if lacking a heavy skull condemns one to be prey. But this arrogant interpretation fails to grasp the profound wisdom in Qianqian's bones, a wisdom based on absolute defense and camouflage. Her long snout was not meant to show off power, but to outline a safe boundary in a cruel world. In the second year after settling by the flat pond, on a night obscured by dark clouds, danger inevitably penetrated the reed defense line and descended upon this silent haven. A massive tyrannosaur, driven mad by long-term hunting failures, tracked the faint scent of warm life and crept toward the edge of Qianqian's campsite. It was a silent game of will and life or death unfolding in absolute stillness. From the predator's maw, lined with short, coarse barbs, thick, corrosive, and malodorous saliva dripped onto the rocks with a faint scraping sound. The ancient cicadas fell silent in an instant, the surrounding bushes frozen in deathly stillness, the water vapor seemed to solidify into ice under the predator's heavy breathing. Yet, facing this terrifying encirclement, enough to frighten any smaller species to death, Qianqian displayed a near-sacred, chilling composure. She did not run wildly like her panicked kin, nor did she roar. Instead, on the warm mudflat, she lowered her center of gravity with extreme slowness, inch by inch. She tucked her limbs tightly beneath the cold dead leaves, turning her gray back, covered in countless fine scales, directly toward the predator, disguising herself entirely as a piece of decaying wood. The vicious tyrannosaur stopped inches from Qianqian, roaring frantically and clawing up mud, attempting to find a flaw with its keen sense of smell, only to find the scent of rotting leaves. Qianqian lay there quietly, maintaining a statue-like stillness. Her black eyes, hidden in the shadow of her snout, were indifferent and deep, even the rise and fall of her breathing were slow enough to induce despair. This siege of will lasted for a full hour. In the end, before the immovable pressure of Qianqian, the madness in the predator's eyes was replaced by frustration, and it could only retreat back into the dark forest. After the danger subsided, the midnight in the marsh plains welcomed its most holy and gentle moment as the clouds cleared, revealing the vast, tear-inducing ancient sea of stars. The late Cretaceous sky was full of unknown vastness, as giant emerald nebulae rotated slowly in the dark, casting a faint, healing glow. Cold air whistled over the reed tips, yet around this warm damp wood, the temperature remained as comfortable and stable as a mammal's den. Close by, ancient cicadas began to tentatively flutter their wings, emitting a faint rustling resonance, while frogs joined in with low, slow croaks, gathering into a natural white noise lullaby. Qianqian completely let go of all guard. In this private haven, she began a deeply immersive pre-sleep relaxation ritual. She adjusted her posture, resting her long, exhausted, and stiff snout, wearied by trekking and the standoff, gently, inch by inch, onto the damp mossy log. At that instant, the warmth stored in the log all day began to seep slowly, like warm spring water, through the texture of her lower jaw. The heat penetrated her thick tissues, wrapped her tense nerves, and spread to every muscle aching from the cold, dissolving all heavy anxiety within. Qianqian breathed out, the air puffed from her flat nostrils, turning into a faint mist in the cool night and vanishing into the depths of the sky with a lingering, rustling sound. Then, with elegant slow-motion grace, she spread her limbs, allowing every joint to yield to gravity and sink into the embrace of the mud. This warmth, fused with the low-frequency insect calls, held an irresistible hypnotic power. It was so stable that Qianqian no longer felt like a wandering refugee, but a bone essential to this very log and water. The night muted the ancient storms, the sound of the wind became a soothing white noise. With this safety net provided by the earth, her eyelids became heavy, and her consciousness dissipated into a gentle, void-like dream. The end of life arrived calmly and elegantly. For Qianqian, it was merely the most peaceful night out of countless comfortable ones. It was a typical late Cretaceous dry season, filled with the scent of withered plants and a night sky lit by thousands of gentle meteors. Qianqian was too old, her internal blood pump could no longer carry warm blood to her extremities, and every breath required enduring the grinding sound of calcification deep in her chest. Yet she showed no panic. On that starlit night, she returned to the damp log that had accompanied her for most of her life and slowly lay down in her habitual posture. She rested her weary snout gently among the stones and leaves. The wood was rough and warm, bringing the ultimate liberation to her life force. As the warm gravity of the earth took over, a collapse of the sandstone cliff poured soft red sand into the bay. There was no fear and no lament. This supreme wanderer of relaxation in the marsh, within her beloved mud nest and the comforting white noise of the waves, passed directly into eternal sleep. Over tens of millions of years, the world changed. This ancient plain underwent splits and drifts, as former bustling shoals were compressed into cold rock. Qianqian's frame, maintaining its perfect lying posture, was tightly encased in sand, undergoing dissociation and mineralization. Every vertebra and delicate snout trace fused with the cold rock, becoming an exquisite part of the Earth's skeleton. 70 million years acted like a traceless flood, mercilessly washing over every corner of the continent, leveling former swamps and turning bustling inland seas into today's desolate deserts. Qianqian's massive frame, encased by sand and time, fused with the cold rock to become part of the Earth's skeleton. Because she died so peacefully, undisturbed by predators, when modern archaeologists brushed away the last red earth, the scholars were stunned by this breathtakingly complete fossil. It was preserved perfectly, the texture of the giant snout and spine was clear, maintaining that healing posture of relaxing on the wood, like a gray statue just fallen asleep in the midnight. The world marvels at this fossil's milestone significance, defining her existence with measurements and structural analysis, yet few can see past the academic terms to that late Cretaceous night, the warmth that once gentled her entire life. True power needs no roaring or slaughter to prove itself, it is contained in the deepest quiet and self-restraint, like the long lullaby Qianqian wrote with her life. You, too, may be lying in your own haven, with no Cretaceous storms or secular strife around you. The trivialities that make you weary are but insignificant dust on the plains in the face of time, not worth sacrificing your sleep. The earth will, just as it accepted Qianqian, gently support your exhausted body with the softest gravity and the boundless night, taking away all your unease. Your bed radiates the perfect temperature, and the soft quilt provides the most comfortable embrace, just like the warm marsh and wood that once accepted Qianqian. Put down your defenses, listen to this story, and let the slow, deep inhalations lead you, slowly, to close your eyes. Good night, Qianzusaurus Qianqian, good night, to every soul who has laid down its armor and returned to mountain-like peace.